Hello, beautiful human being. This is a follow-up video to one where I ended saying that I was going to address what it means to seek God's kingdom. It's from the book of Luke. Matthew also talks about that, the way he puts it. He's quoting a different sermon by Jesus where Jesus says, "Seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you." He's talking about basic needs like food and clothing and the other stuff that we, just worry about to survive, and just how, God's ready and willing to provide those things. But Jesus really lands on this sort of condition for that relationship to be, for those things to occur, for to be under God's care, that he will seek his kingdom. And so, I wanted to just address here some things, particularly for Americans, but you don't have to be American. I think this really is about human nature. It's just Americans have succeeded. This country has succeeded in living in such a way that I will address here. So I'm not going to pretend to try to give a history lesson or anything like that. I'm just going to acknowledge things that we know to be true. And the importance of acknowledging it is to recognize that there are some inherent obstacles to us not only seeking God's kingdom, but there are obstacles to us even understanding what it means to be under a king. Okay, you may see where I'm going. So, in the United States, actually there are rallies that are based on this. No kings. America was established on this idea that it's not going to be a country governed by a king or a queen, not governed by royalty. It was built on declaring independence from Britain. America was a British colony, or I'm sorry, what became America, the United States of America, it was prior to that was British colonies, and Britain had many colonies throughout the world. There was a big colonization period. Britain wasn't the only country doing it. It was Britain and France and the Dutch are doing it, Spain, many other countries. So, all right, so we have the Declaration of Independence. And the point here to establish is that America, like, what is America built on? I want to just kind of put this out there, paint the picture. If you disagree, please say you disagree and say why you disagree. So America's built on this rebellion against royal authority, okay? And really, technically, it was corrupt royal authority was the perception. There are grievances against Britain. The crown had to do with taxation without representation and, some other things. Now, ironically, the American colonies were the least taxed of all British colonies at the time. And so I find that kind of interesting. Also, the colonies had developed some grievances about things that, in hindsight, are actually quite debatable. Like, for example, the colonists wanted to push westward, and Britain, ironically, Britain actually was trying to protect the indigenous peoples who were in the western frontier there, or further west rather, the Midwest and that sort of thing. And Britain actually posted soldiers to guard those boundaries to prevent colonists from taking those lands. And the great irony, Britain was trying to protect the indigenous people from the colonists, which is really interesting. But the colonists wouldn't have it. And so here's the clear thing I want to establish, is that America was built on a rebellion against authority, okay? Now, it's not hard to see the connection to today. We celebrate rebels. You look at all the movies from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. Many protagonist kind of heroes are these rebels, and there's a time and place to resist authority that's expecting us to participate in something that's wrong or evil. Okay, but that's not exactly what was going on with the colonies. Okay, that was a different story. They just felt more oppressed, not as taken care of, that sort of thing. And, they weren't able to get what they wanted, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in the process of this rebellion against the crown, there was the Boston Tea Party. There were colonists who vandalized a private business and dumped all their tea in apparently they were under orders not to harm anybody, which is good, but they destroyed huge monetary value of tea. So, so when Jesus says, seek God's kingdom, or seek first God's kingdom, here's what I want to present to you. When you think of submitting yourself to a king, do you have an experience that helps you understand that conceptually? Like, is that intuitive to you? You're like, yeah, I get that. I can, I totally get obeying a king and giving my allegiance to a king. And, a king basically claims rights. The king has rights over his subjects. Royalty, they have rights over their subjects in that kind of government. So in America, on the other hand, we say we have rights, and they're built into the Constitution. There are many rights, and so Americans are very big on claiming and defending their rights, whereas under a kingship, we don't so much have rights as the king has rights to our allegiance and our service. Okay, so it's a reverse. So really, for an American, they have to essentially give up or surrender their rights. Now, it doesn't mean we're just we're just going to submit to a bunch of abuse. That's political abuse. It's to a king who's righteous and just and gentle and loving. We look at the life Jesus lived. He never claimed, he never acted out of any kind of authoritarian spirit, he didn't lord it over people. He wasn't your typical, like, I'm the leader, you're the follower. He always had the attitude and took the position of a servant. How many times did Jesus come up to people and say, what do you want me to do for you? Look at the way he died. The way he served his disciples at their last dinner together before he was arrested. He's washing their feet like a slave would. To the point where Peter is like, you will never wash my feet. I will not let you lower yourself to the level of an ordinary menial servant on my behalf. And he changed his mind afterwards. So I wanted to just recognize that deep in our core, in our very foundation as Americans, there's this sense of independence and individuality, and essentially, we put it kind of like this, like, a man is the king of his home, or he's the king of his household. We use these terms. A man may call his wife, the queen or the, princess, or, something like that. Or a father may call his daughter a princess. Like we attribute royalty to this sense of royalty in an individualistic way. Not that we are collectively under one king, but that we are kind of a nation of individual kings who all claim to have our own rights over our own little kingdom, which might be our home, our body. Nobody owns me, and it's my everything, from my body to my rights to, my opinion to, my stuff, my money. Like it's my. And I mean, hasn't America championed that? You got like iPhones and YouTube. It's all about the individual. Hello, YouTube. This is on YouTube. So I'll probably I'm going to add to this. Well, so I wanted to end this video by emphasizing one thing here. When the colonists declared independence from the British Crown, it wasn't just saying, you know what, we'd rather have a different form of government, which became a democratic republic, representative government, where it's by the people and for the people, right? Not by a king for a king. And yeah, they didn't simply just say, well, we'd rather have this other kind of government. It was a direct rejection, a very intentional rejection, a rebellion against kingship. Now, that's built into the American spirit and the American culture. And unfortunately, one of the consequences of that is that most Americans are going to have an inherent difficulty. I'm not saying impossibility, but inherent difficulty if they don't see that about themselves with seeking God's kingdom. And what I just want to end this on is just to recognize that God's kingdom, that Jesus himself, is not like the British Crown that the United States rebelled against. There's no perfect authority in this world. Even the government that Americans live in today, our government, President of the United States, whether they're in for 4 years or 8 years, they make a lot of decisions that are, they're not always right. No government leader is always right. No authority is always right. No parent. So unfortunately, a lot of people are going to just outright reject kingship and Jesus, including Jesus' kingship. As I mentioned, there are people who in America go out and they say, hey, no kings. And that includes Jesus, sadly. And truly sadly, it makes me sad because this rebellion is not born primarily out of rebellion against authority necessarily. It's born out of a rebellion against unjust authority. Unfortunately, Jesus will then fall into that category in their minds, some people's minds. Now, there are some people who will defy authority because they just are rebellious, period. I'm not talking about those people. I'm just talking about people who are not in their heart of hearts rebellious, but where they may struggle with it because it's built into our sort of cultural DNA. So I just want to present that to you guys. I'm going to share in the next video an interesting flip side to everything that this video is about, where Americans, ironically, as much as we're independent and individualistic and all this stuff, ironically, we have a deep need that we try to satisfy, and I'll share how, for kings. Take care.